Peter Obi didn't wait. He spoke, and he didn't hold back. He said Nigerians do not deserve this. Simple. Straight. Painful. He questioned the timing. How can a president leave, he asked, right after a deadly blast, without saying a word? It wasn't just criticism. It felt personal. Because this wasn't politics on paper. This was about people. Real people. Obi pushed one point again and again. The job of a president is to protect citizens. Not sometimes. Not when it's easy. Always. And when something goes wrong. When lives are lost. You don't stay quiet. You don't disappear. You speak. You show up. You lead. That was his message. No long speeches. No complicated language. Just a clear line that many could understand. And then he went deeper. He pointed to something many Nigerians already feel but rarely hear said this directly. That leadership is not only about decisions made in meetings or plans written on paper. It is also about timing. About presence. About knowing when the country needs to hear from you the most. According to Obi, this was one of those moments. A moment where people were shaken. A moment where fear was real. A moment where even a few words from the top could calm nerves, give direction, and show that the situation was being handled. But instead, there was a gap. A gap between what happened and what was said. And in that gap, questions started to grow. Obi did not ignore those questions. He leaned into them. He made it clear that in his view, leaving the country at that time sent the wrong signal. Not because travel is wrong. Not because global meetings do not matter. But because of when it happened. Timing, he stressed, can change how an action is seen. The same trip, taken at a different time, might not raise any concern. But now, coming right after a deadly incident, it felt out of place to many. He also spoke about responsibility. Not in a vague way, but in a direct and grounded tone. He reminded listeners that the role of a president goes beyond policy. It carries a human duty. A duty to stand with citizens, especially in moments of loss. A duty to acknowledge pain. A duty to respond, even if all the answers are not yet available. Obi's message was not filled with anger alone. There was also urgency in it. A sense that this was bigger than one event. That it touched on a pattern many Nigerians have been worried about. A feeling that leadership can sometimes feel distant when people need it close. He framed it in a way that was hard to ignore. Not as a political attack, but as a question of standards. What should Nigerians expect from their leaders in moments like this? What is the minimum response? What is the right tone? What is the right action? These were the questions behind his words. And they landed. They spread quickly across platforms. People began to repeat parts of what he said. Some agreed completely. They felt he was speaking what they had been thinking. Others disagreed. They argued that leadership involves many moving parts, and decisions are not always as simple as they appear from the outside. But even among those who disagreed, the conversation had already shifted. Because Obi had changed the focus. From just the event itself, to the response that followed. And that shift mattered. It moved the discussion from what happened to how leadership reacts when things go wrong. It placed attention not only on security, but on communication. Not only on action, but on presence. And in doing so, it raised the stakes. Because once that standard is spoken out loud, people begin to measure against it. Obi did not present himself as perfect. He did not claim easy answers. But he was firm on one idea. Silence, in moments like this, carries weight. And absence, in critical times, sends a message. Whether intended or not. By the time he was done, the tone of the national conversation had changed. What started as a tragic event had now become a wider debate about leadership, responsibility, and timing. And that debate was not going away anytime soon. Bomb blast hit Borno State. Lives were lost. Homes destroyed. Families broken in a heartbeat. People were waiting. Waiting for one thing. A voice. Not just any voice. The voice of the president. But it didn't come. No quick message. No direct words. No sign that anyone at the top was acknowledging the pain on the ground. And then, news broke. Bola Ahmed Tinubu had left Nigeria. Destination? The United Kingdom. Not later. Not after addressing the nation. Immediately. And just like that, the story changed. From tragedy to anger. From pain to questions. Because to many Nigerians, this wasn't just about travel. It felt like silence. Heavy silence. The kind that makes people ask, are we on our own? People were grieving. They needed reassurance. They needed leadership. Instead, the absence left a hollow space where comfort should have been. Obi's words from earlier echoed louder now. A voice calling for presence, for responsibility, for recognition of human loss. The timing was critical. Moments like these do not wait. They demand attention, clarity, and care. But the absence was telling. It spoke louder than any statement could have. Families mourning, communities shaken, citizens questioning. All while the leader of the nation prepared to step onto foreign soil. It was more than a trip. It became a symbol. A symbol of priorities in question. Of silence when action was needed. Of distance when presence mattered most. The gap between expectation and reality grew wider by the hour. Social media lit up. Discussions flared in homes, offices, and streets. Some tried to defend the absence. They said diplomacy, meetings, global ties. That these matters could not pause. That the world does not stop for national grief. But for many, it wasn't just about diplomacy. It was about empathy. About leadership in its simplest form. A president may travel. A president may attend state functions. But a president must also respond to tragedy at home. Even a few words. Even a short message can change the narrative. It can tell people they are seen. They are heard. They are not forgotten. Instead, the narrative had shifted to anger. To frustration. To disbelief. From Lagos to Maiduguri, the question persisted. Where is our leader? When will someone speak to us? Who is responsible for our grief? And then the world watched as Bola Ahmed Tinubu prepared to step into Windsor Castle. A state visit. An official event. A handshake across nations. Yet back home, lives were still raw. Questions still unanswered. The contrast was striking. The silence after the blast. The celebration abroad. And in that silence, Nigerians felt the weight of absence. Because leadership is measured not only by achievements but by timing. By presence when it matters. By acknowledgement when pain is fresh. By standing with citizens, not just as a figurehead, but as a human being. The moment was heavy. The tension was real. And in that tension, the conversation began to shift. From tragedy itself. To what it reveals about leadership. From loss. To the response that follows. From fear. To accountability. And through it all, one thought lingered. In times of crisis, silence speaks volumes. Presence, or the lack of it, tells a story more powerful than words. And in that story, Nigerians were left asking the question they have long feared to ask. Who is truly looking out for us? Who is standing with us when we need it most? Who is leading in moments that matter? Because in the end, when the dust settles, people do not remember the speeches, the trips, or the ceremonies. They remember the response. They remember who was there and who was not. While all this was happening, the country was watching closely. Bola Ahmed Tinubu was preparing for a state visit to the United Kingdom. His destination? Windsor Castle. It was meant to be a major diplomatic moment. Official, formal, and strategic. On paper, it was important. A handshake between nations. A conversation with world leaders. A step toward strengthening ties abroad. But back home, the timing didn't feel right. Because while leaders were preparing to meet in grand halls overseas, families in Borno were still counting losses. Still mourning. Still waiting for answers. Still asking, where is our government? Where is our leader? The contrast could not have been starker. One path showed a leader stepping into history, cameras flashing, flags waving. The other path showed people in pain, feeling unseen, unheard, and unprotected. And this is where the tension grew. Because leadership is not measured only by appearances abroad. It is also measured by action at home. It is tested in moments of grief, of fear, of loss. It is tested when people need reassurance, when they need a presence that tells them, you are not alone. The absence during that critical moment raised questions that could not be ignored. Was diplomacy more important than life at home? Was ceremony more important than safety? Was protocol more important than humanity? These questions did not stay silent. They traveled across social media, through conversations in homes and offices, across radio and television, and into the hearts of Nigerians everywhere. Even supporters of the government could not dismiss the tension. Because this was not about politics. It was about trust. About accountability. About what it truly means to lead. When tragedy strikes, words alone are not enough. Presence alone is not enough. But absence, especially during a national tragedy, carries a weight that no speech can remove. Obi's words from earlier echoed louder now, almost as if a warning. Leadership is not just about action, it is about timing. It is about being there when it matters most. And Nigerians were measuring every step. Every handshake abroad. Every official visit. Every word released from the office. Because these moments reveal priorities. They reveal character. They reveal what comes first, protocol or people. The optics of leadership are powerful. The reality of leadership is heavier. And in that heavy reality, questions persisted. Does global diplomacy outweigh the duty to respond to citizens in pain? Does the calendar of state visits outweigh the calendar of human loss? Can a leader be present to the world if they are absent at home? The nation felt the tension deeply. And it was not about politics. It was about empathy. It was about responsibility. It was about the simple, human expectation that leaders stand with their people in moments that matter most. While the president's trip went ahead as planned, the conversation at home had already shifted. The eyes of Nigeria were watching closely. The minds of Nigerians were not distracted by ceremony or flags. They were focused on presence, on responsibility, on accountability. And in that focus, one truth became undeniable: leadership is tested not in calm times, not in celebrations, not in photographs. It is tested in crisis. It is tested in fear. It is tested in moments of loss. And in those moments, the absence of leadership speaks louder than any planned visit or official handshake ever could. The story of that day is clear. People may forgive speeches. They may forgive trips abroad. They may forgive protocol. But they will never forget who was present when it mattered most. Who was there? And who was not? Because when the dust settles, the cameras leave, and the headlines fade, only one thing remains: the memory of leadership in action, or the memory of its absence. And that memory will shape how people see those in power, not tomorrow, not next week, but for years to come. It is in moments like these that the true measure of leadership is revealed. And in this story, Nigerians are watching, judging, and remembering.